Top of the afternoon, folks, or evening, or morning, wherever you are. This is live Instagram rooms. Feel free to request to join. Exciting to have you here. We're going to be talking about abuse in yachting. We've got this Laura there. If you're there, Laura, just do a request to join, and you should be able to show up there in my requests, and I can add you. And I'll also try and add you here. And maybe Captain Scott. I know he's underway at the moment. He might be able to join. Alex from
Got me?
Yacht. He's been travelling quite a bit. Laura, is it?
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, got you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. We've never met, have we?
No, we haven't.
Well, we have.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise, we haven't. How are you today?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. I was just here to say hello to people all over the world. I'm coming in from Indonesia, so I'm coffee and the other end of the day.
Oh, cool. We're just midway through the day, and the sun's come out in Seattle here. I don't know if you
Oh,
can.
lovely.
There's a view of the beautiful sunshine in Seattle, so
Nice.
that's something we haven't seen for a while, but enjoying. Anyway, let's jump right into it. Maybe Captain Scott. I know he's underway to St. Martin. There he is, Captain Scott. And Alex Yachting may join, but I know he's travelling to Antigua. So I'm going to try and re-add Captain Scott. But tell us a little about your story in this journey, whether it's the sobriety, whether it's yachting, whatever you feel like joining,
Um,
for the team.
yeah, so I've been in yachting for quite a while. I'm a chief stewardess. I've been in yachting for, a couple of decades really now. And then became sober a few years back and just decided, it's so hard being sober in yachting, evidenced by the fact that I kept trying to stop drinking and found it impossible
Yeah.
because I was in yachting. And I was just like, I think we need to talk about this. And I also wanted a bit of accountability for myself, because if I put myself out there as this sober person in yachting, I can't be sneaking off having a glass of wine in the pantry. And just wanted to meet other sober people and just kind of make it easier, open the conversation, basically.
Oh, beautiful. Hello, Captain Scott. How are you, sir?
Hey, pretty
Hi.
good. Yes. Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. So far, so good. We're on the way headed to St. Martin. Weather's
Nice.
good. Knock on wood. We'll see. And today I'm sober, so it's good.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
That's good. One day at a time.
Yeah, for the time.
Laura, you're in
Say?
Indonesia, correct?
Sorry?
Laura, you're in Indonesia?
Yes. Yeah. So it's 5 a.m. So we're all over the
Nice.
place.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. That's what connects us. So it's good about social media, I guess. But one of the things that just came
Absolutely.
up, Northrop and Johnson just did an event in the south of France, more of a self-defense event. But one of the things that came out of it was there's still so many cases of where intoxicated crew members come back to a yacht and then engage in what I consider forms of abuse to crew. Is that something that resonates with you both? Have you heard stories about this, whether it's on your own vessels or others?
Well, I mean, in terms of being a woman in yachting, it's something I've encountered throughout my whole career. Um, and alcohol definitely makes that more of a factor. I don't know a single stewardess who hasn't encountered some form of, be it physical or just verbal, something that would be classed as inappropriate behavior, sometimes a lot more than that. And if we look at the tragic case that happened this year with Paige Bell, it's like it really just brought to everybody's attention just how vulnerable women are in yachting, actually, and alcohol. Definitely, if you look at the sort of correlation between alcohol and sexual abuse incidents, it's quite high, and these things are a lot more sort of prevalent when alcohol is involved. People lose their inhibitions and think it's appropriate to act in ways that perhaps they wouldn't if they were sober, and it just makes women especially more vulnerable.
Yeah, and I've got to put a disclaimer out there in a sense as well, and maybe Captain Scott's in his shoes as well. Captain Scott's a wonderful captain. I see his leadership skills. I'm very blessed to have to choose good crew and work with good crew that don't abuse alcohol and drugs and then come back to the workplace, because we have a zero tolerance. But to hear these stories and to hear the facts, the Crew Academy did a survey. 88% of crew believe alcohol abuse is moderately or highly common in yachting. And then you're saying that that is a direct relation to the abuse that females in particular feel. That's not a problem. That's an epidemic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think we
I,
it's
did think about that. I mean, what's your take on it, Captain Scott?
well, I think it's an accelerated microcosm of society in general. Of a lot of alcohol gets involved, and people end up going to prison. People abuse. There's a lot. We're in a controlled environment where a lot of times you don't, you're in confined spaces and stuff, and you can't really, it's hard to defend yourself. I'm glad that Northrop and Johnson had that class on, how women can protect themselves and stuff like that. And I know I have two daughters and stuff like that. And one of them wants to be an engineer on yachts and stuff. So I'm a bit apprehensive, but I'm teaching her more to have the skills to where she can keep herself out of these situations. And it's if someone can go out and have a lot of drinks, our policy is, well, then you can get a hotel room. Don't come back here, because it's not it's we don't want you to hurt yourself, and two, we don't want you to hurt somebody else, and you've already made some poor choices already. So but it does happen. People have too much to drink sometimes, but a lot of times it's because we're doing a lot of stressful, high stressful work and stuff. It's a way of venting and stuff, and it's about kind of maybe creating more opportunities for people to do other things to let off steam and stuff. Because I know in my younger days, and it's happened in my you know, older days too, is you get into a habit of maintaining and self-medicating and stuff like that, whether it be alcohol or exercise or what have you. You do all these things when instead of trying to figure out what the actual core of the problem is, and you're usually reacting to a lot of other things that are going on internally that maybe you may not recognize. Other people may recognize it, but you don't. And alcohol tends to accelerate or accentuate those issues along with other drugs. There was that old Bill Cosby bit where he said, he was talking about cocaine, and he said, well, oh, his friend was saying, yeah, cocaine's great, it intensifies your personality, and he remarked, well, what if you're an asshole?
Yeah, there you go. I like. I mean, it's
Sorry
look.
for the language, but that was a direct quote from Bill Cosby. Not that that's the best person to be quoting at this day, but
Yeah, yeah. No, but
sorry, it
there's
was it was it was a good reflection anyway.
yeah, understood. But there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, number one, I'm not naive to it. I do see it, and I have seen it. I've seen relationships destroyed in places like
Hmm.
Martin, Antigua, Newport, Rhode Island. Absolutely beautiful crew members in a relationship that's healthy, that just from actions individually just destroyed their relationships and have gone different paths from that one moment. So, I'm not going to say names or people, but I have seen it firsthand. And as the captain, I've had knocks on the door at 6 in the morning and crew trying to explain their stories. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the truth's the truth. It'll come out. But there's a saying here. I've done a bit of research for this one because it is close to my heart. Because you can't pretend to care about crew and be a leader and be a captain, and then ignore these type of facts.
Hmm.
And then hearing your story, Laura, and hearing Northern and Johnson's and what they've taken out of that, self-defense classes. When we have to start training stewardesses in self-defense, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
That's a horrible side of the industry. When we're taking away from the actual training of leadership to to physically protecting yourself. But what it says is drugs and alcohol is a side effect of not feeling good about oneself and trying to numb or mask the pain. There's a lot of self-help books. There's a lot of things and
Hmm.
resources for drugs and alcohol. Um, my take on it, though, is Laura, let's just start off with what else can we do? Because I think that's a good engagement for people to hear. What are the alternatives from, well done, crew, that was a great charter, here's your money, let's pop open some champagne. What's your
Yeah,
advice to all out here?
so I think it's so interesting because so much of what you're saying is exactly that. It sort of comes down to good leadership, and having people at the top, be that heads of department and captains who genuinely sort of care about the crew. You know, there are so many people in the industry who are just there for a paycheck, you know, and then they're kind of like, I don't really want to know what the crew do. You do you, like, but I think having that sense of togetherness that's not founded around alcohol, you know, organizing crew days out that aren't just like falling into the nearest bar, you know, like going for crew paddleboarding sessions, going for brunches, doing like we're going to go for this like slap up brunch or something. You know, of course, people might still want to have an alcoholic drink, but it's not. I feel like going for a drink at the nearest bar, like you get into port and you like fall into the nearest bar, that's
Yeah,
considered the norm. And I
and it is
think as
relaxing.
well
Like,
having
don't get me wrong, it is relaxing. That's you had a
Hmm.
long passage, you want to go away, you want to unwind. These are normal things, but
Yeah.
is it
absolutely.
because yachting's in the maritime sector where historically this has been tolerated? Like from
Hmm.
tots of rum back in the day to a male dominated industry where I know some management companies allow the consumption of alcohol on board after your watch. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think again it comes down to so much as you've rightly said, so much alcohol consumption comes down to a sense of numbing. That obviously there's a sense of relaxation. It's not to say that everybody who drinks has an issue with
Yeah.
drink, you know, it's not to say that everybody who drinks it causes problems. But you know, when there is that issue where you are looking to it for a life resource to cope, it's where it becomes problematic. And I think, especially in yachting, where it is such a high pressure environment, again, it comes down to good leadership. So much of the stress that crew incur is like it's burnout, fatigue, you know, feeling like they're not being heard, high tension, long hours. And it's making sure that the people in control, I mean, there's only so much that you can do because whilst yachting very much is moving towards an element of positive mental health, we all know boats where people are still overworked. You're still told to lie on your hours of rest because, you know, you have to get the job done. And it's just making sure that you've got people at the top who are really protecting their crew, protecting their team, you know, so they're not getting flogged and that need to drink because they're feeling so overwhelmed and so unheard. And, you know, they've got a chief stew shouting at them every day. Those are the things that really cause so much, you know, discontent on board. And you do still get management people in leadership like that, you know.
Yeah, true. And you mentioned all the key points that I was going to say. Why substance abuse is rising in yachting, high pressure, long hours, work hard, play hard, young crew, lack of consistent policies across yachts, stigma around helping, you know, about asking for help. All of those things are factors of why we're in this situation. But, you know, going back to leadership, Captain Scott, you and I think, are quite similar in, you know, we want to go for our walks by ourselves. We both have
Yeah.
a family. So a lot of our time is kind of individual and you know we're spending time with our family, so we're not engaging in those crew activities. So how can we then make sure our heads of department are enforcing these type of leadership skills? Does that come in training on board, you think?
Yeah, I believe it does, and to her point, where having activities outside of the boat, just kind of crew days, not necessarily have to have a you know alcohol involved or anything, but just hikes, people going to the gym, or game night, or just anything that can kind of get everyone kind of develop that camaraderie and stuff. And I know it's tough, especially when everyone gets done with 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks straight of charter and stuff like that. A lot of people want to unwind, but if you put alcohol in the mix there, and the problems that developed over the last 6 weeks, they go exponential. Sometimes it might have just been a small thing that maybe we could have addressed along the way by being a little more interactive with the crew and stuff, and just kind of I try to focus on, especially when we're busy, to try to check in with everybody on a daily basis, or at least walk by and let them know I'm there, and just by being there. I think it's like, because I notice that at home a lot of times, I know my girls, like being the dad, a lot of times they mostly notice when I'm not there.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly.
when's dad coming home? It's like I get that random text from my youngest daughter every once in a while, but so it means like, well, that's time for me to I got to get home now. So because that's one of those things where they won't say anything, and I think the crew are kind of, a lot of crew are like that too. It's more of us with our responsibility. I know that a lot of our time is isolated, and we're talking to our family as well, and a lot of the times when we're solving these problems, we kind of need to be alone and have time to think, and the crew need that time as well. So giving them time to where they can decompress, that don't necessarily have alcohol involved, I think is something that's important. And I know, I've had my issues with a lot of different things on board myself, and we all need that time. And for me, with or without alcohol, I know that once a year I started off, for me, I do the sober January, and then it ended up being, and I think I did it start about 15 plus years ago. And then it ended up being 90 days, and then it was sometimes 6 months, and I still do it but it's not necessarily just alcohol or anything. It's sugar, it's other, it's just kind of that time I take to reflect and like, what can I do better for my family? What do I need to do better here on the boat? What do I need to do better? And that takes a lot of introspection. And I think if you give people the opportunity to do that and say, hey, wait, it's not everybody else. It's something I'm doing. I need to change.
True, true, but and it brings up a good point, Laura. Though, how do we, with age, become a bit wiser, and we engage in these things of sobriety and allocating time for ourselves. But how do we set boundaries for junior stews or junior crew, though, Laura, to protect them, because they're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, they're here to enjoy this wonderful world of
Yeah, yeah.
yachting and have a Pete Fellini or have a, like, how do we set those boundaries? How do we help?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's a great question, and there are so many people now, interestingly enough, and I think we're seeing this shift internationally. It's not just in yachting, where younger people just generally aren't tending to drink so much,
That's
and
true.
it's really it's nurturing that, because there are so many occasions that I have seen where somebody's not drinking and the rest of the crew, give them a dig and they're taking the piss and everything like that,
Yeah.
and it's just really, it's not tolerating that. It's making it known to the crew that that's not acceptable. It's encouraging, it's not like othering people for the fact they're not drinking. Small things, but like even having alcohol-free drinks on board. So it's like, it's not, oh my God, this person, I have to sit here with the water and I introduced alcohol-free beers onto a boat because a couple of people wanted them. I brought them on, they were gone. So many people wanted them as an option. Just,
Yeah.
like when you get crew beers, get crew alcohol-free beers. The amount of people who would choose them over alcoholic beers, I was very surprised. Um,
Yeah.
but it's also just making sure, I think for me as a chief stew and head of department, that I have a very open policy when it comes to discussing how people are feeling,
Hmm.
and it's making sure that as you're at the top of the tree, letting that filter down. So for your heads of department, if you've got great people in place who know how to nurture their team. It just means that you are, as you say, like, I'm the same. I need my own time. Oh my God, I need my own time as well. I'm not sort of constantly hounding people, but just making sure people have those. Maybe I know there's so many leadership courses now and things like that, but they really know how to not just run a department but look after their
Hmm.
people, and making sure you have that sort of policy. You know, the amount of boats I've worked on over the years where somebody's got drunk and they've just been fired, you know, and it's like maybe there's an issue there that needs to be solved and that person potentially needs a bit of support. Is that always up to the boat? No. But if it's a long time crew member, I've known somebody who worked on board, this was years ago. Oh my God, I'm like aging myself. It's like 2008. But there was an incident on board, nothing harmful to anybody else. It was just relating to himself, and he was fired. It was his only boat. He'd been on there for 8 years. He had a great relationship with the captain, but it was such a sort of
Yeah.
strict policy where it's like that maybe needs, there also needs to be a little bit of understanding that there is, you know, every people who work on board are humans. They're not machines. People are going to make mistakes. Of course, in certain instances, it's a one strike rule and you're out. But it's like if somebody's struggling, it's like looking for those. I'm always looking like which person in my team's maybe not doing so well, and how do we then nurture that person? What do they need so that they're not looking to just either maybe quit because they think that's the right option or looking for an escape in some way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I resonate with that. I mean, I try and learn a lot about psychology and things and how they affect things. And my goal is always to be a better captain, or be a, and you know, it's harder because the crew are getting better as well and smarter. And AI, it's you know,
AI captain.
as a middle child, exactly. As a middle child now, I've always thought that I've kind of been neutral, and I see the victims. I see that story, you know, and it's unacceptable and zero tolerance. But I also see the pain that goes in with people who are suffering from, you know, psychological issues or mental stresses or a lack of mental fitness. And I think just as much effort needs to go towards those people as well to prevent the reoccurrence of these situations. Because firing someone and sending them back into the yachting is not really helping. There's
Hmm.
got to be a, you know, and I want have been great, but there's got to be a support network that we follow up with those people. And you know, I'm blessed once again to work with so many wonderful people in my career. But the ones that are struggling are kind of the ones that stuck with me a lot more, because I can maybe do a positive influence and help them in their journey, whatever that may be, you know, and check in then a couple of months later, a couple of years later. And over like 25 years in yachting, some of these people have come back so strong and such beautiful people from the worst case scenarios I could imagine. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think
Does.
also, you know, that's such a great attitude to have. And it's also understanding, you know, we aren't psychologists.
Yeah.
We can only
Hmm.
do so much. And sometimes what that is just holding the space for people for them to talk and encouraging them to get help, you know.
Yeah.
But it's just losing that sense of shame, which is so prevalent around drinking. You know, we've all done things that we've woken up in the morning and been like, oh my God, did I really? I'm so embarrassed. I don't want to go into the crew mess. Like,
Yeah.
we've all been there. And, you know, it's just when that, with drinking, you know, it doesn't start off typically at a
Hmm.
No.
point where it's a problem, you know. Obviously it's progressive, so like it's always fun to begin with, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes, you know,
A
not
culture.
3 times a week.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not 3 times a week. It's actually every day when I finish work I'm going to sit in the crew mess and crack a beer, and actually let's, do you want to go out for beers? And every, you know, you find every morning it's, you're a bit foggy, and it's like, and it's so insidious, and it grows and grows, and suddenly before you know it, again, not always, but it can develop into a problem. And it's not that we can kind of swoop in and solve this problem as like, you know, you're a captain, I'm assuming we're not therapists, but it's just being able to be there for people and have, I again, like having this sort of open door policy to talk about anything. People come and speak to me all the time about, you know, just issues and shit that's bothering them, you know, to, so it
And
doesn't
cross department,
grow.
like cross department or just your department? Because I think as a crew, we
Well,
sometimes put these boundaries up.
Well, I think just as a chief stew, you're kind of boat mum, so it,
True.
it can be
So
anybody.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
But what
true.
about testing, Captain Scott? I mean, I've got the Tooth Fairy travels here. and they've said the amount of drugs used in the industry is shocking. There's another person. I personally think drug testing should be more often done. I've never been tested being in the industry since more than 4 years. I've engaged in drug testing on board. A lot of times it's not for the outcome to catch someone. It's for the long-term development of a team to realize transparency is everything. Honesty is everything. And that's generally why I get involved in a new program that I join. I said, okay, let's get all the secrets out here. Let's see where the level is and what we
Yeah.
can work on, rather than you've got a problem, goodbye. It's how
Yeah.
do we address the problems we're walking into. So what's your take on the drug and alcohol policies on board and testing, Captain Scott, as a captain?
It's similar to yours. We do have a random policy, and we do it every so often. But I think it's more just to find out where people are, kind of like what you said. But if we do have suspicions about certain things, we do it right away. Just because, a lot of times alcohol is masking some other substance that are going on there as well. And sometimes they go hand in hand with other things. And I would say alcohol is probably the biggest thing. That's probably why, as she alluded to, that it's a part of just a bigger problem in society, because it's just so prevalent, so easy to get to, that people use that to mask a lot of things. And it's the drugs in particular, I wouldn't say that they're any more prevalent on yachts as they are in society, because they are pretty prevalent now, especially with marijuana, and you're seeing a lot of you know, mushrooms and therapy and ketamine and stuff like that. So people have a little more access to a lot of things, not necessarily the hard drugs, but I would say certain things are a little more acceptable than when I was younger. And I think it's probably why a lot of the younger people aren't really necessarily doing the alcohol as much, because they have other options, and they don't see it as a good thing, because in the US you can't necessarily buy alcohol till you're 21, but you can get marijuana and mushrooms when you're 12 or whatever. You can get alcohol if you really want to, but I think you get in more trouble, and it's easier to find the other drugs.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, because the other side to it is we take people to places that are really popular and really kind of
Yeah.
the part of the scene. So the
Yeah.
yacht crews that travel around the world, they go to these places like Antigua, Newport. The reason I'm doing this week is because a lot of crews and a lot of industry are going to Antigua. And the things I saw and heard of in Antigua last year were horrible. You know what I mean? And not from our team per se, but the scenarios there. So we talked about the reason why. We talked about the industry. We talked about the pressures. We're going to talk about how to support crew. We gave some ideas as well, Laura, and that's very grateful. One of the things that came out of the Northrop and Johnson event also, and I want to see some more information about this event, is how do we then deal with abuse and intoxication of guests? Because I've been on programs that I ran, and I've had
Mm,
guests say stuff to stews intoxicated, that they felt like they need to dance in front of the guests.
mm,
And then I see them dancing, and I'm like, what are they dancing on the cameras for? And then I asked them, and they said, oh, no, the guest is drunk and they want us to dance. And I'm like, that's not this program,
mm.
obviously, but
No.
that's where do you go with that, Laura, as a chief stew? Because you're more hands-on on the guest services side of things. But that's another stressor that we don't even see most times.
That is such a good question, and it is so difficult.
Hmm.
It is so difficult to navigate because, again, not on this program, but in the past, I've had stewardesses before I was the chief stew, drunk guests, and it's like, oh, he tried to corner me in the gym, sort of thing. And I mean, again, we're
Mm,
going back a long time. We're going
Yeah.
back to 2008. This particular incident happened where, oh my God, there was sort of no crew didn't have a leg to stand on then. Now
yeah.
we have a lot more power as crew. We can voice things a lot more easily. And I think it would be so easy for me to say, like, you should go to your captain and you should say, this has happened and we don't feel comfortable and you hope it's going to get dealt with. That's not the reality. It's like, well,
Mm.
this is a repeat charter guest. He's been coming
Mhm.
on for 5 years. Like, we're going to lose you before we lose the guest.
Yeah,
And it is so difficult. And I honestly, I don't have the answer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's just,
Scott?
it's a
Yeah.
case of trying to be as supportive as possible. And as the chief stew stepping in, like I always will step in if something is happening that makes my team feel
Yeah,
uncomfortable, always. And take that onus is then on my shoulders. And, you know, I'm big enough and old enough, I can, you know, laugh it off and kind of handle the situation in a way that perhaps they feel they can't. Um,
yeah, but
but
these stewardesses
it's
doing
really,
late shifts. You know, like I've had.
Mhm.
I look back in my career now,
Yeah.
and the reason I'm doing this is like I want to give back. And Captain Scott, I see your energy, and I think it's beautiful, and we're aligning on so many things. And but I think back in my career, thinking, oh, that was a 19-year-old girl left alone with six, you know, male and females, all
Yeah.
drinking from the hours of 10 o'clock to like 1, 2 in the morning, and there's a junior deckhand on deck, and that's it. So we're exposing these people to these situations. But what's your advice in that situation, Captain Scott, or what's your take on it when guests
Well,
push that boundary?
to Laura's point, there's no easy answer. You know, each situation is situational. If it's pretty bad, I've pulled guests aside and just say, hey, that's not acceptable. You know, or hey, you need to, you know, cool it on the drinks and maybe take a step off for a minute. You know, what have you. And it's kind of how you approach it. Like I'm sure it's similar in a lot of places. If sometimes you have to de-escalate the situation because people sometimes have the tendency to get very excited in that, but there's no easy answer because the you know like Laura was saying with the repeat charter guests for 5 years, you know, if it depends on what exactly they're doing and what they did to the young stewardess. If they're putting their hands on them and stuff like that, that won't be tolerated. But you're exactly right that 2008 and stuff like that. It was like, well, that's the job. And I got told stuff like that when I was, the maid and stuff like that. Like, well, that's the job, and I did a bunch of day charters. For to help friends out down in Miami and stuff. And it is some of the most ridiculous stuff that I had to pull people aside for is some of it was pretty awful or what have you, but you have to threaten to shut down the charter and stuff and go back. And it's kind of a fine line or whatever, because you got maybe eight big guys and there's me and one stewardess. It's like at a certain point it's a self-defense situation. Like, well, do I need to get the flare gun? Do I need the spear gun? What are we going to be doing here? So you have to, I always approach it as like, how am I going to de-escalate this and kind of figure out what happened, because I wasn't, maybe I wasn't watching on the cameras or something happened where it was out of bounds where we didn't see that. So there's no easy answer, but you kind of have to set the precedent that certain things will not be tolerated. But the question is, how do you go about doing that without, just being super strict and making it so that people might be joking around and not, they might think it's fun, but maybe it might be sliding a bunch of other people. But so it's a really hard situation to really say that there's a cut and dry policy or there's one
Yeah.
that will solve all of it.
True, but what you're saying is boundaries is the key.
Yeah,
So
true.
establishing clear boundaries, which comes down to crew training. Like, I do this because I learned so much from these conversations, especially with Captain Scott's experiences and yours, Laura, and the platform you have. But I think the more I kind of think about this, is we need to spend more time with our junior crew explaining the boundaries that they have a
Hmm.
right to have. They should not be verbally, sexually, or physically abused in any way, shape, or form. And they need to, at that time, say, I'm not comfortable in this space, pick up the radio and call for help. And
Yeah,
that is sound advice. You both agree?
yeah, and
100%.
yeah, and I would say sometimes, it's some of the crew that I've seen that I've had that didn't last very long that were instigating these things because they were looking for more than just the job.
Yeah.
So that could make it for a really awkward and intolerable situation for everyone else. So you had to really kind of be careful and shut that down, because that just makes us all look They're
Yeah.
not very professional.
And last week we talked about banter and how banter can then go into something. And, and this Northam & Johnson event talked kind of about that, how a stewardess on watch on the boat is not engaged with the drinking activity, but it all comes back to the boat. And she's now responsible for the vessel. So we talked about kind of alternatives as well. I just want to do a quick shout out to Captain Kelly. On Thursday, December 4th, 7 to 8 a.m., there's going to be a walk in Antigua with Captain Kelly and a lot of other different industry professionals engaged. So the industry itself, when I was in Antigua last year, that was one of my complaints, is you do your own individual walk. But what type of things would you like to see the industry do, Laura? Like for those type of things, not just a one-off, like more activities that can engage people in health. For me, it's nature. Like get us all out to nature, solve all the world's problems, in my mind.
It'll work.
I'm sorry, I lost you for a little bit at the beginning. I caught the end. What was the first bit of what you said? We're underway, so the internet's a bit dodgy.
Okay, no worries. I was just saying Captain Kelly's doing a walk in Antigua from 7 to 8 to raise awareness for mental health and also Yachting Minds Matter. What other activities have you come up with in your platform or your advice for different programs to implement either once a week or what you'd like the industry to do, like marinas, instead of putting on drinking activities? Like, what else would you like to see? What's your vision?
Yeah. So, like I heard you saying about getting out into nature, for me, 100%. And I always espouse the benefits of getting outside, especially, for interior crew or people who are sitting behind a laptop all day. Get outside. Just go outside because we're in a bubble. We're in such an insular environment, especially, in the middle of the season. Maybe you've not got off the boat for ages. You've been at anchor the whole time. Every tiny thing seems massive, like, oh my God, somebody left a cup in the sink again. It's like the trigger to lose your mind. So it's like, just get outside, because like I said, especially for us interior crew, you can sometimes not see daylight for a few days. And it's like, you need to get outside, get some perspective, on like, there's a big old world happening out there, and actually, just to get some perspective. That's on a personal level. But absolutely, in terms of industry wide, so often there's crew barbecues, there's things like that. And that's great. I think that's great. You need to encourage community connection and intermingling between different boats so that you don't stay in this bubble. Things don't become so introspective. But again, have the options. Options. Have alcohol-free options. Have alcohol-free cocktails. Have the things there that make it feel inclusive to people who maybe don't want to drink but would like to attend. And also, as you say, things like walks, things like setting up. If you're in a port and you happen to be lucky enough, to have a big space, like organize bigger events, like all crew, like workout sessions, 6 o'clock in the morning, to encourage that way of meeting people, like yoga, anything. It depends where you are, really. And it depends what facilities you have, but definitely in terms of on board, like, we're always doing things. A lot of the crew on here, a lot of them drink, a lot of them don't drink. And so we're always doing things that, we do yoga, we do movie nights, we do pamper sessions, we do all these sort of things to connect with the crew.
Pamper sessions.
Pamper.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be nice.
Face mask nights. But,
I think I had a Sober October. The crew kind of started that, and I'm like, yep, I'm all in. And then I had
I love that.
Guinness 00 or whatever it was, and it was great. Like, and there was all these different Carlsberg, and it's just, so you're on the dock, you're having your braai, you have your 0% alcohol or beer. But then what I liked about it is I can still go for my walk and talk to my wife. It doesn't affect your mind or your body. So I tend to think normalizing it is the key. And then subtly having these conversations, but also subtly embracing the people that are making those good decisions. Like, I think it's Cass Franken said, I feel showing up sober, being yourself and demonstrating that a sober lifestyle is not a boring one. I find that crew become more intrigued when they see the sober guy, girl enjoying life. So they're more intrigued. So a lot of times I like uncomfortable conversations, believe it or not. A lot of times crew, I see them like, you look great. You look great. And then the one who's been drinking, or I can smell it or see it. This is not, Unbridled's great. I gotta give blessings to the owner and the team. But in other programs, I'm like, you look terrible. Like
Yeah,
you do not look good today.
yeah, yeah,
Take it easy. Take it easy. And then,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
think, is that something we can kind of laugh at and have fun with?
yeah. I think so. I think the activity's off the boat, and it does depend where you are. Like we're both underway for a little while, I guess, or a little bit. So, just getting people to, hey, go outside, sit up top or whatever, read a book, something
Yeah.
like that, or and just kind of engage with people. And I've kind of focused on engaging with other boats in the marinas more, just to kind of see what's going on and see if, like, hey, I'm going to go for a walk later on. We're going to walk down this way, or what have you. There's a hike around here because I love hiking. I'm looking forward to being in the Caribbean again. So,
Yeah.
as many hikes as I possibly can go on a daily thing, because it's I live in Florida and it's flat. It's just Florida scrub everywhere. I can hike on the beach. That's nice. That's great and everything. But getting up in the mountains and stuff like that reminds me when I was a kid in Jamaica and stuff, where we just hike around and go wherever. And but those kind of things are really important, because I think it builds a community. And if you can, we can affect that by doing that, doing things like this and having the discussions. And I think having that discussion with that person, hey, you look a little rough today,
Yeah.
because I had one crew member. It was 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, and we had 7:45. We had a meeting every day, and I saw him in the crew mess, and he's kind of befuddled, and he's looking there, and he's patting his pockets and going, "Oh, keys, that's good. Wallet, that's good." And then I had to go back out to my car, and then I see him walking out, and he goes, "Oh, car's there. That's good. That's good." And then he walks around the car, and he's like, "Oh no, get no damage. That's really good. It's really good." And
Oh,
I'm like, I was like, "Hey," and I'm not gonna say his name or anything, but I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Look, it's 7:30 on a Tuesday, son. Do you
That's
need
not,
some help?
not,
What do you need? Like, you got to kind of change a few things here, because you're happy about no damage to your car. You should not have been driving." I kind of railed into him a little bit, and I was like, "If you need me to help you out with something, let's talk about it, or what have you." But
yeah, but some
um,
people have to hit rock bottom
I,
sometimes.
yeah, 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 yeah,
I I think is what the only thing I would say, and always I'm a big fan of taking the piss, but the one thing I would say is, like, if you do notice something like that, a quiet word, nobody likes to, it doesn't do
Okay.
anybody any favors to say anything in the crew mess in front of
no, no,
everybody.
it was
It's,
just me
yeah,
and
that is
him.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just, that's something that this is where that element of shame comes in, and
mhm.
I've seen it, I've been part of it, I've had it happen to me, like, oh my God, I had a few drinks last night, and immediately you feel like a bag of shit, honestly.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and you don't want to, it's like, it creates that kind of like inward, oh my God, I
Same.
I feel terrible now, I know I look terrible, I like it adds to that sense of shame. So a quiet word,
yeah,
100%. But I do think that it's important to, public shaming
yeah,
Yeah.
can be a little bit detrimental, is the only thing
yeah,
I'd say.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
It's
But
it's more the
it's
definitely,
positive. Like
yeah,
Nadia's
it's
written a comment here. Nadia was just a wonderful chief stewardess, and I've worked with her in the past. Amen to sunrise walks and all the pampering. Many crew connect with departments outside of the usual day to day. Invest in
mhm.
each other's goals. So
Yeah,
that's good advice from Nadia. And last year at this time in Antigua, I was out running. Nadia was running a lot faster than me, so I think she overtook me. And then we both recognized each other, and it was like, cool. And it's like,
yeah,
and we're healthy, we're happy. And then going down the docks, I'm looking at the boat to boat, looking at the way the shoes are lined up, going, "Oh, there was a big night last night with a lot of people."
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
the
think
shoes are always a giveaway when there's like
yeah,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
flip flop.
yeah, yeah.
when you see the dress shoes and the socks and the
Halfway down the dock,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah,
No,
that
But I
a
think
couple
that's
people
also,
in this.
that's, and as you were saying, you do it, I do it. It's really important to lead by example. You
yeah,
know,
Yeah,
when for example, with us, we're at sea a lot. The nature of the boat that I work on, we do a lot of passages, and as soon as there's, like the call for the swim call or something, I'm the first one who's like, yeah, let's do it. Come on, like interior team, put down everything. Sometimes we're too busy. Let's say it just is what it is. But we're never too busy to jump in the water for 10 minutes,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like when you have, I think, as a head of department, quite often it's easy to sort of say like, "Oh, you guys go, it's fine, but I'm not going to go," and then the whole team feels a little bit like, "Oh, well, maybe we shouldn't go," maybe
Yeah,
we shouldn't
yeah,
be
yeah.
doing this. So it's like whenever possible, I always try to like do the things like I'm doing it, you guys are doing it, and same with like I'm like, right, let's do yoga this evening, let's do this, like lead by example, so that they know like there are other ways to do things. It's like.
Yeah, true. Well, Caroline
It's
from
not just like
yeah,
you say, going for the sunrise hikes, and when we're in port, which doesn't actually happen all that often, but but recently when we're in Singapore, it's like, right, who's coming for a walk with me in the morning? And invariably people are like, oh my God, what time? But people do.
I try and do it rain and
Let
hail
me,
or shine, and it's
yeah.
sometimes like this morning pouring rain, like 36 degrees
Yeah.
Fahrenheit out in Scotland. I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? But then the sun comes up a bit, and I'm like, all right, cool, different
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
Yep, all right. And then I speak to my wife or I start my day, and things happen. So Caroline, who's a friend of all of us, says having a purpose. Caroline from Super Yacht Services Guide, and her son Tristan is back in Antigua this year. Says having a purpose too helps, whether it's individual or collective as a crew and yacht. So Marathon for Mental
That.
Health, the Super Yacht Lick Fitness or some company right now is doing a
Yes.
10-day challenge.
Yeah, they
Scott.
are doing a challenge. Yeah.
So a lot of positives are happening in the industry. So, but the negative that I want to kind of go back to is the people that are engaged in these, activities of drinking and abuse of alcohol and drugs. They have their battles and their problems, and we've got to recognise, when there's not two sides to this. There's not the
Yeah.
victim and the person punishing. There's a victim, and we need to support that. But the people that have alcohol issues and abuse and generally stems from internal or psychological issues, like baggage, for example. They talk about if someone is abusing drugs or alcohol, it is an outward expression of something that is going on inside. And I think that's important to understand. A lot of times they're trying to numb the pain, and they're expressing it through the misuse of substances. And
Mhm.
that's where I think really as a community can help. And not by calling them out or names, but just by subtly trying to take steps in the right direction. So you mentioned don't kind of publicly shame them, just bring them aside and have a
Mhm.
chat, try and offer good advice. It talks about our negative actions or addictions are just expressions of wounds that have not healed.
Mhm.
Everyone has these problems. It's just that when you're surrounded by a place like Antigua, St. Martin, Fort Lauderdale, and you're given that one drink, sometimes that one drink for the wrong person at the wrong time can turn into the worst decision of their lives. And
Mhm.
they don't mean it. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just
Yeah.
means the situation. Does that kind of resonate or make sense? I know I'm going a little bit psychological,
No.
but very heartfelt because I've seen these things. I had a chef
I.
years ago, 20 years ago, that fell off a boat in South America, and it was cold waters, like down south, and the boat, it was drinking heavily by himself, and he drifted past. We threw a mooring line at him. We got him. We brought him back. Never drunk again. Changed his life. But he had to hit rock bottom.
Mhm.
So these are the people that I'm also trying to reach out to, is not just the victims, is let's help both sides of this yachting community. What are the resources for people that you both are aware of? I'll
Well,
take Ice One because that's the easy one that I'm a huge fan of lately.
yeah. Well, I know
I mean,
there's. You go. No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, obviously, there's Seize the Day that we know as well.
Yeah,
Um, there's people like me, and I'm not a psychologist, but the way that I do sobriety and the way that I find to be the most useful is just talking to somebody who's been there.
Okay.
talking to somebody who gets it. Because if you have never been in a situation where you feel as though, I think I've got maybe a little bit of a problem, or maybe it's becoming a problem and it's not a problem yet, and you're talking to somebody who has no idea what that looks like, you can only get so far. Talking to somebody who's been there, and I've had quite a few people, I've had captains reach out to me, chief stews who've reached out to me and said, you know, like, I've got somebody on board who I think might have a problem. Can I give them, like, can I put them in touch with you?
Yeah.
And they have done, and we've spoken. And just through having that conversation, again, I'm not a psychologist, but what I can do is I can empathize, I can talk to people, and then I can help them. Helping people just know that they're not alone, for starters, is the main thing. And just in terms of finding somebody that you trust that you can talk to, who has your best interests at heart. I mean, yeah, there are places like Ice One, and sometimes, you know, it doesn't even have to be to do with yachting. There are so many different
Yes.
resources out there for, you know, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, there's anything that you can look for online that will give you help that's not to do with yachting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Sorry,
would,
I'm dropping in and out of the internet again here.
yeah,
No,
I would to piggyback on that. You know, there's, you know, Yachty Minds Matter. There's All Safe Yachting, and there's, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous. They're all over the world. You know, there's Al-Anon and stuff like that, to where they, you know, they can give you support. And it's what Laura said, is that a lot of times, if you get with these organizations, they always put you with a sponsor or an accountability partner. You don't necessarily have to do that with, if it's alcohol or anything, but you can do that if you're trying to find other activities outside of drinking. Like, I saw you going for a run. Like, hey, you mind if I run with you or anything? Like, hey, let's, you know, if we're going for that walk, hey, I'm going to be here at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Let's go. Let's go. And then you support each other. Hey, I'm going to be there. You know, hey, come on, let me get you. You know, and that kind of stuff. Because Alcoholics Anonymous is very faith based, and it's they structure it to where you have a support network, you have a sponsor, you have an accountability partner, you have people that you can call. And a lot of these other organizations in yachting are starting to have those things too. But, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, they're virtually, most places you go in the world, there's some place where you can get off the boat and go to a meeting, you
yeah.
know, or just be around people that are not. And, you know, there's no questions asked. There's no, you know, there's no reprimanding or anything. You know, it's, you know, I always followed that mantra of, you know, praise in public, reprimand in private, because like Laura alluded to, that can be very detrimental. That can be triggering for some people. But there's a lot of organizations. There's even online chats and stuff like that. There's even um, I know All Safe Yachting has a chat GPT that you can talk to if you don't feel like talking to someone. But it will, when you get to a certain point, it'll put you onto a specialist or a counselor or something, you know. And sometimes we just need somebody to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Xanthi, who's been a wonderful supporter of Unbridled from Wave Wellness, indicates something I've not heard of, the crewmess. So crewmess.org,
Nice.
www.thecrewmess.org. I haven't heard of that. So if everyone wants to check
Yeah, I
that
don't know
out.
that one.
No, neither.
Yeah,
I've heard.
the crew
Yeah.
mess is great. Actually, it's a resource that was created by somebody who had addiction and alcohol issues, and it was created to be able to support crew and again put them in touch with the people who need help. And the one thing that I will just
Crewmess.
say,
Okay.
though, whilst alcohol and drugs are the most damaging in terms of addictions, I think there's often this idea that it's like, okay, I just need to stop drinking and problem solved.
Yeah.
But often it then gets replaced. So then it's replaced with sugar, it's replaced with sex, it's replaced with scrolling, it's replaced with another form of numbing. And
Yeah.
typically, exactly as you said at the top of this conversation, it's indicative of something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really getting to the root of that issue. And sometimes that does need extra outside help. You know, it takes a lot of introspection, a lot of work, but that starts by opening the dialogue with somebody.
Yeah.
Because if you just get rid of the drink and alcohol, you're
Yeah.
still battling with that issue that made you want to drink and take drugs in the first place. So
Yeah.
Amen,
it's
Laura.
getting to the
Amen. I am
Yeah.
so
That's,
grateful for your words, Laura. I
yeah.
think You've hit the most important part of what I wanted to try and, listen to and say today, is that it comes from within. It's a baggage
100%.
that you're carrying. And they've written down here, the best form of attention we can offer is one's own self. And this circles back to kind of the therapy that you can do for your own self, about the breath work that's got, it's got me on. Captain Scott's got me on some great breath work. The yoga that some of the crew have kind of got me on. We can all be better human beings, but we have to
Yeah.
start with a willingness to help ourselves, and then be vulnerable, and then reach out to other people's support. So I think Laura, you've been nothing but, I know this cuts out after an hour, I've heard. So I don't want to lose this sentence, but I really think you've hit it on the head there. Is we need to invest more in ourselves and being more present, and that resonates to all the people around us and creates a positive message. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they reach out? What's your kind of closing message for everyone out there?
So for me, right now, the best way to reach out to me personally is on Instagram. It's Sober Crew Social. I'm at the point of just about to launch my website, and coming soon will be a membership, which means that people can join. And the idea of that is creating community. Again, it's setting up functionality, so wherever you are in the world, you can find your sober people, because so much of not drinking and out in the industry is feeling isolated, and that's really what I'm trying to combat. But if you need to get hold of me, just find me on Instagram. I do have an email, but I don't always get things, as quickly. So Instagram's the best bet.
Those phones. Lately, I've been like, just send me a message on Instagram, because I check that morning and afternoon, and phones get a bit busy. Spam calls. I'm
Well,
like,
and I don't always have signal, and things go through to a junk,
yeah.
box. It's
Yeah, emails are
but yeah,
tough.
And what about
just
you,
that
Captain
reminder
Scott?
that
How can people
Uh,
get a hold of you, buddy?
well, usually you can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up my name. I'm usually on there quite a bit, and Instagram now, a bit, but LinkedIn's the easiest way to find me, because emails and stuff, a lot of times they get. I need to go back to the drawing board of organizing my email.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny when I'm on a yacht. I get the yacht email a lot, like, and that's the only one I use. And then I forget my personal one, and people are like, "Well, we've sent you messages." I'm like, "Well, it's a different world there."
Yeah, well, the problem is I
Working.
have like multiple emails funneled to one, so then they're categorized into a certain thing through this app that I have. But LinkedIn's easy because it's an instant message. It's easy. Instagram too. It's fine. You know.
Yeah. Well, my name's Captain Liam. If anyone needs to reach out on Instagram, the DMs, or any form, you can try, and I'll try and respond accordingly. Once again, Laura, I've really resonated with what you're saying. I think that is a key to not only professional, sustainability, but more importantly, personal growth. I think
yeah.
what you're doing is what the industry needs to hear, and I hope your platform grows bigger and bigger. If I can help in any way, please let me know. And Captain Scott, it's one of my favourite days of the week now,
Me
Tuesday.
too,
I get to
man.
see your lovely face again
Me
and your
too.
smile, and I look forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing mountains that are coming up. Rather than that flat walks in Florida that I see.
Yeah. Me too. Me too, man.
All
Oh,
right.
I
Well,
love
be
it.
safe, stay safe, be blessed, stay sober, and give thanks to the people around you. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.